Hello everyone. So today we are going to discuss one of the most important article related to the rights to freedom of religion, that is the Article 28 of the Indian Constitution. So let me start with a simple question. Imagine you are studying in a government college and one day the school administration tells you that from tomorrow every student must attend a particular religious prayer and religious classes. Okay, so can a school legally force you to do that, or can a government funded institutions teach religion? And the third question is, can a student refuse to participate in religious worships? So to answer all these questions, we have to read the Article 28 of the Indian Constitution. This article basically protects both the India's secular character and an individual's freedom of conscience. By the end of this video, you will understand the meaning and purpose of Article 28. Okay, the different types of educational institutions under Article 28, the clause 1, the clause 2, the clause 3, and the landmark case of Aruna versus the Union of India, that was in 2002. Let's begin. Basically, Article 28 deals with the religious instructions and religious worships in educational institutions. Okay, its primary objective is to maintain a balance between what? The secularism of the state and the religious freedom of individual. So India follow a model of secularism where state do not identify itself with any religion. Therefore, education funded by the public money should generally remain religious neutral. Okay, at the same time, the citizens must remain free to follow their own faith and participate in religious activities voluntarily. Okay, Article 28 ensures basically that no state religious indoctrination, no forced religious participation, that is respect for religious diversity. So that is to protect religious freedom of students, preserve the secular character of states education, and prevent any sort of state sponsored religious indoctrinations. Okay, so before understanding the clauses, we must first understand the different type of educational institutions, because Article 28 applies differently to different institutions. Okay, so type of educational institutions. For examination purpose, we will divide education institutions into 4 categories. So the type 1 is what? The wholly state funded institutions. These institutions are completely maintained through what? The government funds. Okay, for example, the government school, the government college, the public educational institutions fully funded by the state. So the rule is that no religious instructions can be imparted or allowed. So okay, now the type 2, that is the state administered but established under the religious trust or endowments. So these institutions may currently be administered by the government. Okay, these are administered by the government. However, they were originally established, but they are established by whom? Through a religious trust or endowments. Okay, basically the trust specifically requires the religious instructions. Okay, so the rule is that religious instructions are allowed or permitted, and this is the exception under Article 28 clause 2. Okay, then the third one is the recognized or aided institutions. So these institutions basically receives the government's recognition, okay, and or what? The financial aid. Okay, for example, the aided school, the aided college, the government recognized private schools. So in these institutions, the religious instructions can be given, but attendance cannot be compulsory. But not compulsory attendance, and these are covered under the Article 28 clause 3. Then the fourth one, that is the purely private unaided institutions. Basically these institutions neither receives state aid or nor are they wholly maintained by the state funds. Okay, so in these type of institutions there is greater freedom to provide the religious educations. Okay, however they remain subject to what? The constitutional limitations. Okay, so now as we have covered with these types of institutions, so now let us examine the 3 clauses individually. Okay, so Article 28 clause 1, the clause states that no religious instructions shall be provided in any educational institutions wholly maintained out of state fund. Okay, let's break it down. 3 important words. First, the educational institutions. Second, wholly maintained. And the third, the state funds. This means if an institution is completely funded by the government, okay, completely funded by the government, the religious instructions cannot be provided there. Okay, so religious instructions cannot be provided there. Why? Because taxpayers belongs to different religion. State cannot use the public money to promote one religion over another. This reflects the secular character of the constitution. And remember one important distinction. So Article 28 prohibits what? The religious instructions. It does not prohibit academic study of religion. For example, teaching Hinduism, Islam, Christianity or Buddhism as subject of study is different from teaching a student to practice those religions. So the first one is education and the second one is religious instructions. So this distinction become very important in the Aruna Roy case, which we will discuss later. Thus Article 28 clause 1 protects the secular education. Okay. Now we will move to the second clause, that is the Article 28 clause 2. Basically it gives exceptions to clause 1, and Article 28 clause 2 states that nothing in the clause 1, okay, shall apply to any educational institutions which is administered by the state, but have been established under what? Under any endowment or trust requiring religious instruction. So this is an exception. Let us understood through an example. So imagine a religious trust established a college and the trust deed specifically states that the religious instructions must be imparted. So later the government took over the administration of an institution. So the question is, will Article 28 prohibit religious instructions? The answer is no, because Article 28 clause 2 create an exception. Why does the constitution allow this? Because it respects the wishes of the founder and the conditions of the trust. So thus two conditions are necessary. So condition 1 is the institution was established under a trust or endowment, and condition 2 is the trust required what? The religious instructions. Only then can a religious instructions continue despite state administrations. Therefore Article 28 clause 2 balance the secularism with respect for historical trust obligations. Now we will move to clause 3. Now we will read the Article 28 clause 3. This is perhaps the most important clause from an individual's perspective. It basically gives protection against the compulsion. So it states that no person attending a state recognized or state aided, no person attending these institutions, the state recognized and the state aided institutions can be compelled. No person can be compelled to participate in religious instructions or religious worship without consent. Okay, so the key phrase is no compulsion. Suppose the school receives government aid. The school conduct religious classes or prayers. Okay, can a student be forced to attend? The answer is no. Participation must be voluntary. For adults, their own consent is required. For minors, consent of parents or guardian is required. And this clause protects the freedom of conscience, religious liberty, personal choice, and right of minority students. So the Constitution recognizes that the faith is the matter of individual choice. Therefore, religious participation must always be voluntary. And this clause is one of the strongest protection against the religious coercion in education institutions. And there was one important landmark case, that is the Aruna Roy versus the Union of India in 2002. Now let's discuss the landmark case, the Aruna Roy versus the Union of India in 2002. So this is the most important case related to Article 28. Basically a PIL was filed under the Article 32. And the petitioner challenged the National Curriculum Framework for School Education. Basically their argument was that the curriculum promoted the religious content and was therefore anti-secular. So according to them, it violates the Article 28. So the Supreme Court carefully examined the issue. The court made important distinctions. Religious instructions means promoting a particular religion as faith, whereas the religious education means the studying the philosophy, the values, the ethics, and teaching various religious academically. The court held that there is no constitutional prohibition against studying religious philosophy. In fact, such study can promote moral values, tolerance, mutual respect, and social harmony. Therefore, the court held that there was no violation of Article 28 and the National curriculum framework for school education was constitutional. So this judgment classified that the secularism doesn't means ignorance of religion. Rather, it means equal respect and objective understanding of all religion. Okay, because there is a clear distinction between the religious instructions and religious education. Religious instructions includes the teaching of faith as truth and preaching doctrines, religious indoctrinations. So these activities come under the religious instruction, whereas religious education includes the philosophy of religion, the ethics, the values, the academic study of religion. So the constitution allow the religious educations, okay, but it doesn't allow the religious instructions. So let's revise Article 28 in a quick summary. So Article 28 protects freedom regarding the religious instructions and worship in educational institutions. Okay. So Article 28 Clause 1 states that no religious instructions shall be provided in any educational institutions wholly maintained out of a state fund. Okay. Article 28 Clause 2 gives the exception for institutions which are established under the endowment or trust, and endowment or trust which requires the religious instructions. Okay, then the Article 28 Clause 3, basically it states that no person, no student can be compelled to participate in religious instructions or religious worship without the consent. Okay, and then the Aruna Roy case in 2002, which states that the study of religious philosophy is allowed. Religious instructions and academic study of religions are not same. So final takeaway is that Article 28 protects both the India's secular character and every individual's freedom of conscience. So it ensures that the religions remains a matter of choice and never a compulsion. Thank you for watching. If you found this explanation helpful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and see you in the next lecture. Bye.